All right, so here's my 1 week check-in after fasting. Today is the 8th day, and I'm just going to share what my body went through for the last 7 days, as well as my starting weight and what I weighed in at this morning. Now, fasting for me, I've been doing it off and on for about the last 20 years. My longest was an 11-day fast. I also had a 10-day fast in there. Most of them were anywhere from 1 to 3 days. An occasional 4 or 5 day fast thrown in there, but most short-term fast. And I don't know if it's the experience or if this is what everybody goes through, but normally my first day of fasting is really easy. I don't feel any hunger until probably about dinner time, and all is good. Near the end of day 2, I can start to get a little bit of a headache, and day 3, I start to feel some hunger. Day 4 is not good. Day 5 is just awful. But usually by the end of the 5th day into the 6th day, I usually feel really good. And that's not really been the case this time around. For starting this fast off, on the very first day, I started right off with a headache, and it was bad. Didn't feel good. I was trying to drink a lot of water to help, and I went to bed early, hoping that I would wake up the next day and not have it, and that turned out to not be the case. I woke up on the 2nd, had a headache, felt awful, and just powered through. Now on the 3rd day, I started to get pretty hungry, and again was just struggling to get anything done. By the 4th day, the taste in my mouth was it was awful, and that's to be expected with fasting, but this was just, it seemed extra bad. Now also on the 4th, I had a staff meeting that lasted for a few hours, and it was really hard for me to concentrate, to stay focused, to stay in the meeting, to remember things from the previous meeting that were pertinent for this one. It was a bit of a struggle. Now, by the end, I started to kind of hit my stride, and was able to work through some things, and I think it was good that I had to have that meeting, but it was definitely a struggle. Now, when I woke up on the 5th, the taste in my mouth and the emptiness of my stomach, it made me so nauseous. I was wondering if I was going to throw up that day. Thankfully, I had ordered a tongue scraper, and it showed up on the 5th. And as soon as it showed up, I washed it and I went to using it. And thankfully, I read about tongue scrapers, did a little bit of research beforehand, like not to overdo it. And I'm so thankful that I did, because all I did was, just one side, the middle, then the other side, and I didn't push down. I just kind of sat it there and pulled forward. And when I did, I got this kind of bubbly junk off of my tongue. And the taste difference after pulling that stuff off my tongue was night and day. And it kept me going. And where I say I'm glad that I saw not to overdo it, it's not that my tongue hurt, but for the next 2 days, my tongue was a little raw, to the point that I knew that if I would have pushed down more, or I would have taken more passes, it could have been kind of hurting the next few days. Day 6, my headache returned, and I could not focus. There was so much work that I needed to get done, and I just couldn't do anything. And finally, by yesterday, I started to feel like I was turning the corner. Started to feel a lot better. Wasn't feeling so hungry. My mouth still tastes like I'm fasting. I mean, there's no way around it, but it's not as bad. Maybe I'm getting used to it, but it just doesn't seem like it tastes as bad as it did that fourth and fifth day. So hopefully I'm turning a corner. So this past week does not fit my past experience of fasting at all. It's been the hardest week of fasting. I've been really tired. I have slept a lot, all except for the night of the 5th going into the morning of the 6th. And I went to bed probably about 10 o'clock and woke up just wide awake at 3 a.m. And I laid there until about 4:20 until I realized I'm just not falling back asleep. So I got up and I did some reading. And I read until about 6:30, and finally then I was able to force myself to go back to sleep for about an hour. Yeah, the rest of the day, it just I don't know if that lack of sleep contributed to me feeling so bad on the 6th day, or if it was just a combo of things that were happening with my body through fasting that caused me not to get good sleep as well as to feel bad that day. I've also been, I think, colder this time around. Now, it's January. It's cold here. We keep our house cold. I also deal with some neuropathy in my feet from chemo a few years ago, which makes my feet a little bit more sensitive to being cold. But in general, I feel colder this time around. I've had to wrap up with a blanket as I'm sitting around the house, and my hands and feet feel a lot colder, and I'm having to do things to warm them up. In the last video, I said that I would spend time, journaling and reading my Bible and try to do some extra reading of some things that I've been wanting to read. I've felt so bad this past week. I've done 0 journaling, and I have also not read my Bible. I just have not felt good at all. So there's been a few things that have kept me going over this past week, and one of them, even though I don't expect anyone to ever watch these videos, the fact that I had to make this video, it helped keep me going, and it also helped keep me a little honest. I can't tell you the amount of times that I just wanted to have like a piece of bread or just like a single Ritz cracker just to take the nasty taste out of my mouth. And I also even had the thought, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I had the thought of, I could have a Ritz cracker and just not mention it on the video. I was willing to compromise my integrity and lie for the sake of all of this. And thankfully, my integrity, my desire to be honest, kicked in, and it helped me to power through some things. So I'm really grateful that I decided to make these videos, even if nobody ever sees them. The second thing was reminding myself of my wife and kids. I said in the last video that my body is getting in the way of me living the life that I want to live with them. And I just remind myself that my temporary discomfort is worth the time that I'll be able to spend with them. Not only hopefully the extra time that I'll have with them, but also the quality of time that I haven't really been able to have over the last few years because of some health issues, as well as the weight that I've put on. The third thing is actually from about 10 years ago, maybe even more. I was reading through Philippians, and there were 2 verses that they jumped off the page at me. I've read them before that, and I don't know why they stood out so much then. But they're Philippians 3, 18 and 19. And the Apostle Paul writes this. He says, "For as I have often told you before, and now tell you again, even with tears, many live as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their destiny is destruction, their God is their stomach, and their glory is in their shame. Their mind is set on earthly things." Now I know when the Apostle Paul wrote this, he didn't have some fat guy in mind who just couldn't say no to a good cheeseburger. I know that he had a different thing that he was talking about, but those words have just resonated with me over the last 10 years or so. It hasn't always been that way. I mean, I've always been a big kid, but I haven't always been led by my stomach, but something changed. I don't know what. And I didn't like it. I didn't like my stomach telling me what I had to do and planning my stuff around meals. Because when my stomach became my God, then it literally is leading to my destruction. And I don't want my mind set on earthly things. That's not the person that I want to be. So I reminded myself of that. And then the final thing is probably about 15 years ago, I read the book Celebration of Disciplines by Richard Foster. I think it's Richard Foster. And in his chapter on fasting, he compares our stomachs to a spoiled brat. He says, every now and then you need to tell that spoiled brat to shut up and sit down. He probably doesn't use those words, but that's my translation. And he says, the more that you do that, the less outbursts you will have from that spoiled brat. And the more you can get it under control and be disciplined. And I knew that I just kind of had to power through. I had to tell my stomach to shut up and sit down. Over the last week, I've had to remind myself of those things, and it's really been hard. And I don't know if this week will be as hard as this past week, but even if it is, I'm just going to remind myself of those things. Remind myself that my wife and kids are worth my discomfort. That my God is not my stomach. And sometimes it's just a spoiled brat that needs to be told to shut up and sit down. I'm going to keep on powering through with this because it's worth it. Also, I found myself drinking more water this week than I have in the past. I've been drinking distilled water, and I've been drinking about 3/4 of a gallon a day. But even though that's more than normal for me, whether fasting or not fasting, my body just feels like it needs even more than that. So I'm gonna up my intake a little bit. Maybe shoot for about a gallon a day and just see how I feel. It's a lot of water for me, but I think I'll feel better afterwards. Now, with all that yammering done, what did I start off at weight wise, and what is this past week? What did I weigh in this morning? Well, I started off at least 330. I say at least because sadly for the first time I discovered that my scale only goes to 330 pounds. After that, you get a little error message. And so I know that it's at least 330 is what I started out as. It was over, but I don't know how much over. So I'm going to go on the conservative estimate and say 330. And then this morning when I weighed in, it was 309.6 pounds for a total of 20.4 pounds lost this week. Now, because I know it was over 30, I have no problem saying that I averaged 3 pounds a day. And I don't think it was that much over 30 because I lost like 5 pounds the first day. I also know that a good portion of that was water weight. I mean, especially, there's no way that I lost 5 pounds of fat the first day. I know that this first week has been a lot of water, but I also know that I'm a big guy, consume a lot of calories, and as a result of taking in 0 calories, I know that I have burned some fat and I've lost some weight. How much is water? How much is fat? I don't know. I've also lost about 2.5 inches around my waist. Now, I've taken measurements of pretty much my whole body when I started this out, but I'm not worried about taking those each week. I'll just take that at the end of it so that I kind of had a starting point and ending point of measurements, and I'll share those at the end. But today the main thing was just what has this past week been, and how much weight did I lose. I wish, looking back, that I would have actually done something each day to document it, but I just didn't feel good enough to do it, to be quite honest. So Here's to the end of the first week, the beginning of the second week, and unless something comes up, I'll be checking in next week. Bye.